The Most Reverend John C. Wester has been the pastoral leader of the Archdiocese of Santa Fe since he was installed as its 12th Archbishop in June of 2015. Correspondent Megan Kamerick sat down with him last month to talk about issues important to the Catholic Church, including immigration and the high rate of poverty in New Mexico, and to look at the role of the Church in the lives of the faithful.
Archbishop John Wester, thank you for joining us here on New Mexico in Focus.
Thank you, Megan. Nice to be with you.
Well, you've been here about a year, coming from Salt Lake City, and one thing you said when you have been here a little while was that you were shocked at the level of poverty and addiction here in New Mexico. How do you think the Church should be engaging with communities across New Mexico to address these issues?
Well, I think it's a very good question, and I think that, as you know, the Catholic Church has, especially lately, has really been focusing on families. And we've put a lot of emphasis on parenting, couples, husbands and wives. And I think the Church can help by looking at our sacramental preparation programs and helping people, what does it mean to be a parent? What are the responsibilities? And help people to grow in that area. There's a lot of outreach we can do as well. As you know, we have a lot of outreach for young families, people who have young kids, helping them in that regard. So there's a lot of ways we can give advice, counseling, support. A lot of families are under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, working a lot of jobs, trying to pay bills, keep their eye on their kids at the same time. I mean, they're pooped, they're exhausted at the end of the day. And so we need to see how we can help them. We have a lot of people in the parishes that are great parents, grandparents that can maybe help. So I think there's a lot of practical things we can do, as well as some of the more maybe theoretical things we do about really advocating for strong families and good parents.
And so many may not have two parents in the household, so they
That's
need
right.
extra
Quite a few
help.
do not. It's amazing. I think in the Catholic Church now, all the studies coming out from CARIS show us that when I was first ordained, most of the people were getting married in the church, Catholics I mean, and it was a big shock if they were living together. They would try to hide the fact because they thought they'd get in trouble. Now people don't even think about it, and now they even, in many cases, don't even think about getting married. They just don't see the institution as being valuable.
Do you think the Church can help as well with those families, even if they don't fit the sort of
I do, because the Church,
traditional view of family?
Yes, I think the Church wants to reach out to everybody.
Okay.
And I think that we're all God's children, and the gospel is meant to be proclaimed to everybody. And so anybody who we can help, we want to be able to help, if we can, in a way that we can.
The abbot of the Norbertine community here in the South Valley called you a Pope Francis kind of bishop. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a high compliment. I thank Abbot Joel for that. I hope to be, I want to be, I'd like to be. To me, it means, to be pastoral. To me, that's my first. I've always wanted to be a parish priest. I love parish priesthood. For some reason, I never seemed to be able to. I was there for 4 years. I was a pastor. For 3 years, I was an associate pastor. But most of my life has been in the chancery or administration. To me, it's being with the people. Saying mass, anointing the sick, baptizing the children, witnessing marriages, helping people, rejoicing with people. Sharing their sorrows and their successes. And so that's what I want to be and hope to be. And so to me, Pope Francis is someone who's very pastoral. He's very caring and very giving. He hasn't, as far as I can see, changed any huge doctrines or anything. But what he's done is he's emphasized a gospel of love and compassion. We're currently in the year of mercy. And the Pope is saying, reach out to people in mercy and compassion. Listen to them. What are their needs? What are their problems? How can we help them with the message of the gospel? So I think that's, to me, paramount.
Like Pope Francis, you've been focusing on poverty, and you were very critical of a recent advertising campaign launched by the Children, Youth, and Families Department to reduce child abuse. You and the Las Cruces Bishop, Oscar Cantu, said the state resources should be used in more effective ways. How do you think that the state should be taking on child abuse and trying to address the issue here?
Well, I want to say, first of all, that I applaud the state and the governor and her administration for making efforts in this regard. We're behind that 100%. We want good things to happen. Our concern is that we need to have the programs for the people. We're only reaching a small fraction of these families. And so we need money to have programs, substantive programs, that are going to really help early childhood families. And so that's where the money has to go, not so much in marketing or computer programs and things like that, which may be a part of the picture, but it doesn't do any good to open a door but to have nothing on the other side of the door. So that was our concern, is that we pool the money to use it to expand the services to more people. And of course, I know this is a hot button issue here in New Mexico, but we believe that it's important to take from the general fund, as a formula that's not going to deplete it in any drastic way. It's a very measured and conservative formula, but that will release money to be used for people.
You mean the land grant
The
program
land
fund?
grant, exactly. So I think to us that's an important piece of this whole puzzle. So again, I applaud efforts to help kids, and we're all for that. But we see that a lot of the money is more in marketing and less in substantial programs.
You've also been fairly outspoken about immigration. You have pushed for a more humane approach to immigrants, and you've criticized the U.S. policy of detaining and deporting immigrants. We're seeing immigration from Central America surging again as people flee violence. So how do you see your work around this issue, and also the role of the church?
Well, in many ways, I feel a certain failure, that as a church, and as other interested groups, that we don't seem to be getting the message out. People are getting the message from other sources, and those sources can be very jaded, can be very biased, and in my opinion, often they're wrong. I believe the American people, the people in New Mexico, are good, and they have good hearts. They want to help people. But I don't think in general that we realize as a country that a lot of the immigrants coming to us are fleeing imminent danger. In some cases, they're fleeing death. We hear these stories. We go down to Latin America and Mexico. We hear these stories firsthand. Children are on school buses, and they're told if they come back again the next day, they'll be killed, and their families will be killed, and so they can't even go to school. They're being forced into being drug traffickers and human trafficking, and the atrocities are just unspeakable. So we really need to work as a country to solve this problem. And it's a complex problem. There are no simple solutions. We have to work together. We have to fix the root causes. Why are people fleeing violence and persecution, etc.? How can we help those countries so that they don't have to have these large numbers of immigrants? What can we do here at home to help those who are undocumented, who are, the 11 million or so who are already here, who are contributing, by the way, to our society in very real ways? And so how can we help them? How can we give immigration judges more authority so they can make more humane decisions? Congress has taken a lot of their authority away, and as a consequence, they're shackled, their hands are tied, they can't do what they should be able to do. We have women and little children coming before immigration judges without counsel. They can barely speak our language. It's just not right. We have children in detention and places that you wouldn't want anybody to be in, much less a child or a woman. We have a lot of, and I say that knowing that it's not easy. I do know that our Homeland Security people work hard, our Border Patrol work hard. They're in harm's way. My heart goes out to them as well. So it's a complicated question. I think as a people we have to move away from simplistic answers like building walls. That's not an answer. We know that's not an answer. We have experience that tells us it's not an answer. It's expensive.
Well, I know that people have expressed concern about security and also the potential economic impact, especially when our state economy is not doing well. How do you address those concerns?
The studies are very clear that immigration does not hurt that. Immigrants are always the first to be blamed. Whenever the economy goes tanks, immigrants are the first to be blamed. But if you look at the statistics, they actually help the economy. They provide more jobs. They take jobs that a lot of our people will not take, and I've seen that firsthand. So I think we need to look at the facts. Those are very facile facts that sometimes people throw out. It's simply not true. And even in terms of medical, a lot of the immigrants, the undocumented, for example, put money into the system that they can't get back out. I know one year that I looked at it was like $5 billion in the United States that immigrants put into Social Security that they could not get back out of. I said to one of our congressmen at the time, I said, if we ever fix this system, you're going to have to wait. He said, I know, you're right. Most people don't know that, but you're right. So I think there's a lot of false information out there. Immigrants are good for the economy, and it's really something we need to be aware of.
We've seen a number of studies, one by Pew Forums, for instance, recently said that for every convert to the Catholic Church, 6 are leaving in the United States. One of the reasons often cited is the sexual abuse crisis systemically throughout the church and shifting pedophile priests between parishes. We've had this problem in the past in New Mexico. How are you working to regain that lost trust?
Yes, that's a very important point, and that we have lost trust. It's a sad tragedy, and people have suffered terribly because of sexual abuse. It's just a very huge tragedy. And the church has worked hard to create safe environment for children and young people. We've worked hard. We've got wonderful programs in place. They've been in place for quite some time. Safe environment coordinators, background checks, educational programs, both for the children and those who are working with children, coaches, teachers, priests, deacons, bishops. Everybody has to be background checked and have these ongoing and recertified that their safe environment, has been updated. So we're working hard to do that. Of course, like any large institution, a lot of people aren't aware of what's going on. Many are, but many are not. And so we have to keep getting the word out. I keep reminding our staff, we have to keep reminding, what are we doing? How are we doing it?
One of the things I noted recently, the Archdiocese in Gallup is settling their bankruptcy case, and among the monetary payouts is part of what they need. The court wants them to do an apology.
Mm-hmm.
That's very powerful.
Very important, and I think it's important that a human being make the apology. You can't have something, the church says, I'm sorry. I think it's important, even though, this abuse may have occurred decades ago. Sometimes it's in another country it occurred, and the people moved to the United States. They still need to hear an apology. That's a human, you need to hear that. And you need to hear an authentic apology, not some of these artificial, well, if I hurt you, I'm sorry. It's got to be a genuine apology, and you have to keep saying it. And I recognize that even that's not going to ever, be enough. We have to keep saying it over and over again. I think it was Ron Rolheiser, is a Catholic priest and a fine spiritual writer. He said sexual abuse of a minor is something that shreds the human soul. It's a very graphic metaphor, a graphic image. And he was right, it's a very tragic, and it's not, I know I can't speak of anyone else. I'm taking only, the church needs to take responsibility, and that's what we're talking about. But I do think we also need to realize that it's an epidemic throughout our world and across the board. And we really have to do what we can to protect our children.
Well, Archbishop Wester, thank you very much for taking time to come talk with us.
Well, thank you, Megan. You're most welcome. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.